What if I told you that the secret to attracting her is not chasing her? Sounds counterintuitive, right? After all, society often tells us that if we want someone's attention, we have to go after them with everything we've got, showing interest, putting in effort, and constantly reaching out. But here's the truth that no one really talks about. The more you chase, the more you risk pushing her away. In fact, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to stop chasing altogether. Now you might be thinking, how does that even make sense? But stay with me. When you pull back, when you give her space and stop putting her on a pedestal, it can actually ignite a spark of desire and curiosity in her. Suddenly, she starts chasing you. Why? Well, there's a deep psychological reason behind this phenomenon, and understanding it can completely shift your approach to attraction. In the next few minutes, we're going to dive into the real reasons why women are drawn to men who don't constantly chase after them. I'll share the psychology behind it and explain how you can use this understanding to your advantage. Prepare to challenge everything you thought you knew about relationships and attraction, because once you grasp this concept, it'll completely change the way you interact with women. Are you ready to unlock the truth? Let's get started. Attraction is a complex and multifaceted process, shaped by both psychological and social factors. At its core, certain principles guide why we're drawn to someone. Things like mystery, confidence, scarcity, and unpredictability all play key roles in sparking interest. When someone is intriguing, when their actions keep you guessing, it stirs curiosity. Confidence, too, is magnetic. People are naturally drawn to those who seem sure of themselves. And scarcity? It's simple. The more something or someone feels rare, the more valuable they seem. If someone is always available, their presence loses its impact, and this is where the idea of perceived value comes into play. It's important to understand that attraction isn't about constant effort or availability. The conventional idea that always being there is a surefire way to keep someone interested can actually backfire. While it may seem intuitive to show constant attention and affection, the reality is that when you're always readily available, you may unintentionally convey a lack of value. People want what they can't have, or, more accurately, what they perceive as difficult to attain. The more you make yourself constantly accessible, the more you risk being seen as someone who is too easy to get. And when something or someone is easy, it often becomes less desirable. The key is finding that balance where you maintain interest and curiosity without appearing desperate or overly available. This leads us to the concept of value in relationships. Perceived value is central to attraction. When you're always at someone's beck and call, you lower your perceived value because it creates the impression that you have nothing else going on in your life. This lack of scarcity makes you seem less important. On the other hand, when you maintain your own life, your own interests, and allow space between interactions, your value increases. People will naturally become more interested in you because they see you as someone who has a full, independent life, someone who's not desperate for their attention. Human nature plays a crucial role in relationships, and one of the most powerful dynamics at work is the fact that people often want what they can't easily have. This idea is deeply rooted in human psychology. It's a principle known as reactance theory, which suggests that when we feel something is being taken away from us, or that it's out of our reach, we desire it even more. In the context of relationships, when someone pulls away or isn't constantly available, it creates a sense of scarcity and unpredictability, which increases their value in the other person's eyes. This doesn't mean playing games or being manipulative. It's simply about recognizing that giving someone space and not constantly pursuing them allows the natural dynamics of attraction to unfold. By stepping back and giving her room to breathe, you tap into one of the most powerful psychological forces in attraction, the desire for what's not easily accessible. The more you chase, the less likely she is to see you as a challenge. But when you stop chasing, when you let her come to you, you shift the dynamic in a way that sparks her curiosity, elevates your value, and ultimately makes you more attractive. The concept of the chase in relationships has deep roots in human psychology. Throughout history, the idea of pursuit and attraction has been essential in courtship rituals, often seen as part of the game of attraction. The chase is tied to the dynamics of desire and pursuit, Humans naturally find interest in what is hard to get, and the idea of winning someone's affection is intrinsically linked to the idea of earning it. The act of chasing in relationships has always been an outward sign of effort and desire, and it's not just about the physical pursuit. It's about signaling intention, attraction, and establishing dominance in some sense. This dynamic has evolved from its more traditional contexts, but its core psychological underpinnings still hold true. The roles of the chaser and the chased are critical in this dynamic. The chaser is typically the one pursuing, exerting energy and effort to win the affection of the other. This role on the surface seems like one of power and control, but it can be draining, and it often leads to an imbalance in the relationship. The chaser, while appearing proactive, can end up putting too much effort into gaining attention or affection, sometimes to the point of desperation. On the flip side, the chased feels the sense of being sought after, which can feel good at first. It feeds their ego and provides validation. However, when the chaser's actions begin to feel forced or needy, it can turn them off, because they no longer see the pursuit as exciting, but as something overly available and predictable. This is where the concept of pulling back becomes so powerful. When you pull away, it doesn't mean that you've lost interest. Rather, it signals that you're not desperate for their attention or validation. By creating space, you create room for the other person to feel the need to chase you. In fact, the very act of pulling back can rekindle curiosity and create a sense of longing, which ultimately increases attraction. It's a subtle shift, but it's incredibly powerful. When someone is constantly chasing, they might start to feel like their worth is defined by how much effort they put in, often to their detriment. But when you stop chasing, you're subtly telling the other person that you're okay on your own, that your value is not dependent on their attention. This displays self-respect, which is often seen as incredibly attractive. Real-world examples of the chase dynamics are evident in everyday relationships. Think about a situation where someone is constantly texting, calling, or seeking attention from another person. At first, the recipient of this attention might appreciate it, feeling flattered or desired. But over time, the overwhelming pursuit can become exhausting and lead to a sense of being smothered. In contrast, someone who takes a step back and doesn't always respond immediately or consistently is perceived as having a life outside of the relationship, which can heighten the desire to connect. The mystery that comes with unpredictability often triggers curiosity, and the chased person, suddenly aware that they're no longer being constantly pursued, may find themselves more invested in earning that attention back. Consider a simple scenario. Imagine you've been dating someone for a while, and you've been actively pursuing them, sending texts, making plans, and putting a lot of energy into the relationship. After a while, you stop being as available. Maybe you don't respond to every message right away, or you spend time focusing on your own interests and goals. Suddenly, the other person might start texting more, asking you to spend time together and showing more interest. Why? Because you've created the psychological space that allows them to feel like they need to chase you. You're no longer an open book, always available at their convenience. The shift is subtle but significant. The power of the self-respect in this dynamic cannot be overstated. When you stop chasing, you're demonstrating that your self-worth is not dependent on someone's attention. You show that you are comfortable with who you are, and you don't need validation from others to feel complete. This trait is incredibly magnetic because it signals confidence and self-sufficiency. People are drawn to those who value themselves first because it suggests they will treat others with the same level of respect and dignity. In relationships, self-respect manifests in the form of boundaries, emotional independence, and a refusal to be overly dependent on someone else for happiness. This doesn't mean being aloof or detached, but it does mean that you are secure enough in yourself to step back and let the other person come to you. The act of pulling back when done correctly reveals that you are not afraid of losing them because you know your own worth. This confidence is not about playing games. It's about showing that you have a life, passions, and goals that are independent of your romantic interest. When this dynamic is in place, it shifts the attraction from something that feels forced or transactional into something more authentic and compelling. Ultimately, understanding the chase dynamic is crucial in navigating relationships. By pulling back, respecting your own value, and creating space, you not only protect your emotional well-being, but also increase your desirability. It's about recognizing that attraction thrives on balance, and that sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is to let them chase you. Playing hard to get is often misunderstood, and many people think it's about being rude, aloof, or indifferent. However, the reality is that it's not about playing games or intentionally being distant. It's about managing your energy and time wisely. When you stop chasing and allow space for the other person to come to you, you're setting a subtle but powerful boundary that shows you value your own time and attention. This doesn't mean ignoring someone or acting uninterested. Rather, it means creating a healthy balance where you aren't constantly available and where your time becomes a precious commodity. The psychological appeal of unpredictability is a significant factor here. Humans are naturally drawn to the unknown. We crave what we can't easily have, and when things are too predictable or easy, the intrigue fades. People are wired to find the challenge exciting, and the element of unpredictability in a relationship stirs curiosity. When someone isn't constantly available or predictable, it triggers a psychological response, a desire to uncover what's behind that mystery. People want to know more, and they're more likely to invest energy into figuring out what's going on. If someone is too easily available, they can lose their allure because there's no chase, no mystery. On the other hand, playing hard to get is essentially creating that mystery without being manipulative. It makes the other person want to invest, dig deeper, and chase the connection. Timing and space are crucial when it comes to creating attraction. The key to pulling back is knowing when to do it and how much space to create. If you're always present, constantly engaging, and always available for someone, you'll likely come across as too eager or overly accommodating. But pulling back at the right moment, whether after a fun date, a good conversation, or an emotionally charged exchange, can spark interest and curiosity. Suddenly, the other person is left wondering what's going on, what you're thinking, and why you aren't responding right away. This creates an emotional gap, which can lead to increased interest. By pulling back just enough, you trigger the natural human inclination to pursue what's not always accessible. Creating space without seeming cold or unapproachable requires subtlety. It's about setting healthy boundaries without pushing the other person away entirely. For instance, instead of texting constantly, you might take a little longer to respond. Or, instead of always being available for last-minute plans, you can start prioritizing your own time and commitments. These small shifts signal that while you are interested, you have your own life, passions, and responsibilities. The person you're engaging with will see that you're not desperate for their attention, but rather, you're someone who values themselves and their time. Importantly, this doesn't mean being rude or dismissive. It simply means you're not always at their beck and call. If done with respect and consideration, it signals maturity and self-respect, both of which are extremely attractive qualities. Real-life case studies offer valuable insights into how this dynamic plays out. Consider the story of a man named Alex who had been dating someone for a few months. At the beginning of the relationship, he was attentive, constantly texting, and available whenever she needed him. Over time, he realized that his constant availability was making him seem less desirable. So he took a step back. He started focusing more on his own activities, didn't immediately respond to texts, and made plans without always consulting her first. In the following weeks, he noticed a change. She started reaching out more, initiating conversations, and making an effort to see him. The moment he stopped being so available, her interest seemed to intensify. She started chasing him, not because he played games or was cruel, but because he created the space that made her realize his value. Another example is Sarah, a woman who had been casually seeing someone. At first, she was very eager, sending messages frequently and always being available for him. However, after realizing that he wasn't making much effort, she decided to focus more on her own life. She pulled back a bit, stopped texting him first, and didn't drop everything for last-minute plans. As a result, he started reaching out more and becoming more invested in their interactions. The space Sarah created allowed him to see her as more of a challenge, and he began to value her time and attention more. These examples show that playing hard to get doesn't involve being cruel or ignoring someone intentionally. It's about creating enough space to spark curiosity and increase perceived value. When you manage your energy and time wisely, and when you're selective about how much of yourself you give, you naturally trigger the other person's desire to invest. It's all about finding that balance, where you give enough to show interest but hold back just enough to keep the intrigue and desire alive. This is the magic of playing hard to get. Not as a game, but as a strategy that taps into deep-rooted psychological dynamics. Emotional detachment, in the context of relationships, refers to the ability to maintain a healthy distance emotionally while still being engaged with the other person. It doesn't mean being cold, indifferent, or distant, but rather the ability to not rely on the other person for your happiness or self-worth. Emotional detachment is about not allowing your emotions to become overly tied to the other person's actions, decisions, or approval. When you practice emotional detachment, you can remain grounded and secure in who you are, regardless of how the relationship evolves. It's a form of emotional independence that fosters healthier dynamics and ultimately leads to stronger attraction. The reason emotional detachment works in relationships is rooted in human psychology. When you become emotionally dependent on someone for validation, you inadvertently put them in a position of power over your emotions. This dependency can make you seem needy or desperate, which is rarely attractive. However, when you show that you're capable of being emotionally self-sufficient, you communicate that you are not reliant on them for your sense of self-worth. This creates an aura of confidence and strength, which is inherently magnetic. People are drawn to those who are comfortable in their own skin and don't need constant validation or reassurance from others. Emotional detachment signals that you are not easily swayed by someone else's approval or disapproval, which automatically increases your value in their eyes. Self-worth plays a central role in emotional detachment. When you have a strong sense of self-worth, you are secure in who you are, and you don't need external validation to feel good about yourself. This inner security makes emotional detachment come naturally. High self-worth means you understand that your happiness and self-esteem are not dependent on someone else's behavior or affection. You value yourself enough not to overinvest emotionally, especially in the early stages of a relationship. This sense of self-respect and confidence makes you far more attractive than someone who is constantly seeking validation or approval from their partner. People with high self-worth are naturally more intriguing and desirable because they project stability, strength, and emotional independence. The reason emotional detachment works in relationships is rooted in human psychology. When you become emotionally dependent on someone for validation, you inadvertently put them in a position of power over your emotions. This dependency can make you seem needy or desperate, which is rarely attractive. However, when you show that you're capable of being emotionally self-sufficient, you communicate that you are not reliant on them for your sense of self-worth. This creates an aura of confidence and strength, which is inherently magnetic. People are drawn to those who are comfortable in their own skin and don't need constant validation or reassurance from others. Emotional detachment signals that you are not easily swayed by someone else's approval or disapproval, which automatically increases your value in their eyes. Self-worth plays a central role in emotional detachment. When you have a strong sense of self-worth, you are secure in who you are, and you don't need external validation to feel good about yourself. This inner security makes emotional detachment come naturally. High self-worth means you understand that your happiness and self-esteem are not dependent on someone else's behavior or affection. You value yourself enough not to overinvest emotionally, especially in the early stages of a relationship. This sense of self-respect and confidence makes you far more attractive than someone who is constantly seeking validation or approval from their partner. People with high self-worth are naturally more intriguing and desirable because they project stability, strength, and emotional independence. There are plenty of examples of emotional detachment done right. Take the case of someone who, after a few dates with a new partner, doesn't get overly invested emotionally. Instead of texting constantly or becoming anxious about how the other person is feeling, they maintain a balanced perspective. They continue to live their own life, pursue their passions, and keep up with their social circles. As a result, Their partner feels an increased sense of curiosity and attraction because the person isn't overly available or emotionally needy. The detachment here doesn't mean they aren't interested. It simply means they aren't giving away their emotional power by clinging to the other person's every move. Another example can be seen in the workplace, where someone maintains emotional detachment from a toxic or difficult colleague. Instead of becoming overly frustrated, upset, or emotionally drained by the colleague's actions, they choose to detach emotionally and focus on their own tasks and well-being. This detachment allows them to navigate the situation with grace and clarity, rather than reacting emotionally. By not letting the colleague's behavior affect their emotional state, they not only protect their own peace, but also come across as strong and self-assured. The same concept can be applied to relationships, where not being overly reactive or emotionally affected by the other person's actions can make you appear more stable, confident, and attractive. However, there is a fine line between emotional detachment and emotional neglect. While emotional detachment is about maintaining your emotional independence and not over-investing too soon, it must still be balanced with care, kindness, and genuine interest in the other person. You can't simply pull away completely and show no regard for the other person's feelings or needs. Emotional detachment doesn't mean being unkind, indifferent, or disengaged. It means taking a step back when necessary, but still showing empathy, respect, and thoughtfulness when it matters. It's about finding the balance between maintaining your own emotional stability and being present and caring in the relationship. For example, while you may not respond to every message immediately, a form of detachment, you should still make time for meaningful conversations and be emotionally supportive when the situation calls for it. Emotional detachment, when done right, means not being overwhelmed by your feelings, yet still being present and attentive in the moments that matter. The key takeaway here is that emotional detachment is not about shutting down or distancing yourself emotionally. It's about maintaining a healthy emotional balance. It allows you to protect your sense of self-worth and confidence while still fostering connection and attraction. When done properly, emotional detachment enhances the dynamic of the relationship, creating a balance where both people can invest at the right pace and grow in the relationship without one person becoming too dependent or overwhelmed. This form of emotional independence makes you more desirable because it signals maturity, self-respect, and strength, qualities that naturally draw others in. When you stop chasing her, something significant shifts in the dynamic between the two of you. The first thing that happens is that the emotional and mental attention she's been receiving from you starts to diminish. If you've been the one constantly reaching out, initiating plans, and showing a lot of availability, pulling back will instantly alter her perception. Initially, she might feel confused or even frustrated. She might wonder why you're not responding as quickly, or why you're no longer as available. The key point here is that your change in behavior makes her question her own position in the relationship, something that doesn't always happen when you're constantly chasing her. By pulling back, you disrupt the status quo, which can create a sense of unease. Women are wired to pay attention to changes in behavior, and when you suddenly stop chasing, it sends the message that you're not as dependent on her approval or affection. This in turn triggers a psychological response. She starts to wonder why the attention she was accustomed to isn't there anymore. The absence of consistent validation from you might even trigger an internal sense of loss or uncertainty. Essentially, she begins to feel like something is missing and starts questioning whether you're truly interested in her. The sudden shift in power dynamics occurs because when you stop chasing, the focus is no longer solely on her. You've taken a step back and given her the space to wonder whether she's losing something valuable. In the past, she may have enjoyed the feeling of being pursued, but when that stops, she's faced with the possibility that she could lose you. This uncertainty creates a psychological shift, where she feels the need to reassert herself and win you over once again. In relationships, this sense of competition or challenge can be a powerful motivator. When you stop chasing, you force her to step up her game and invest more in the relationship. At the same time, the psychological dynamics behind competition play a significant role. People are naturally inclined to desire what they can't easily have, and this is particularly true in romantic relationships. When someone is easy to obtain, the sense of excitement and intrigue fades quickly. But when that person becomes harder to attain, it reignites a spark of desire. This challenge activates the competitive part of the brain, making the other person feel like they need to prove their worth or win your attention. She might start thinking, "Why isn't he chasing me anymore? What's changed?" And suddenly she feels the need to do what she can to regain your focus. As she begins to invest more emotionally and mentally, you might notice several signs that indicate she's starting to chase you. First, she may begin to initiate contact or plans more frequently. If she previously waited for you to text first or make the next move, you might now notice that she's taking more initiative. She may text you first, ask about your day, or suggest activities for the two of you to do together. Another sign is an increased level of effort in communication. Her texts may become more thoughtful, and she may ask deeper, more personal questions. You may also notice that she starts to show more emotional vulnerability, revealing more about herself or expressing her feelings in a way that she hadn't before. In addition to these behaviors, you might see her become more present in your life. She might prioritize spending time with you, make plans in advance, and show more interest in the details of your life. If there were any areas of hesitation or emotional distance from her in the past, these might start to fade. The fact that she's stepping up her efforts and becoming more emotionally engaged indicates that she's investing more in the relationship, signaling that she's started chasing you in her own way. Real-life examples of this dynamic illustrate how powerful pulling back can be in changing the course of a relationship. Take the case of John, who had been pursuing a woman, Rachel, and constantly initiating contact. However, he began to feel like the relationship was becoming too one-sided, with him always putting in the effort. So he decided to take a step back and stop chasing her. He focused more on his own activities, work, and social life. At first, Rachel didn't seem to notice, but over time she began reaching out more. She texted him more frequently, made an effort to ask about his life, and suggested plans. John, who had previously been doing all the work, suddenly found Rachel putting in the same effort that he had been. He didn't have to chase her anymore. She was now chasing him. Another example comes from Sarah, who had been casually dating a guy named Ben. Initially, she was very interested in him but found herself doing most of the chasing. She would send him messages, make plans, and constantly worry about where they stood. Frustrated, she decided to stop chasing and give him space. She didn't completely pull away, but she stopped being the one to initiate contact and started focusing more on her own hobbies and friendships. Ben, noticing the change, began to reach out to her more. He called her more often, made plans, and showed a deeper interest in her life. Sarah realized that by pulling back, she had created a space where Ben was now the one pursuing her. His behavior made it clear that he was interested and invested in the relationship, and the dynamic shifted completely. These examples show how pulling back doesn't mean losing interest. It's about creating an environment where the other person has to step up and invest. When you stop chasing, you flip the script and force the other person to reflect on their level of interest. As a result, they often begin to chase you, driven by curiosity, the need to win you over, and the desire to feel valued and desired. In the end, stopping the chase can be one of the most effective ways to reverse the power dynamic and make the other person more invested in the relationship. Focusing on your own growth is one of the most attractive things you can do, both for yourself and for the people around you. When you prioritize your personal development, whether it's advancing your career, picking up new skills, or working on your physical and mental health, you create a version of yourself that is both confident and self-sufficient. This kind of self-assurance is magnetic because it signals that you're not reliant on anyone else for validation or fulfillment. People are drawn to individuals who have a clear sense of direction in life, who are driven by their own passions and interests rather than constantly seeking external approval. When you're working towards your own goals, you naturally become more interesting because you're fully engaged in life, not just in the relationship. Building a life outside of the relationship is crucial for maintaining balance and a healthy dynamic. When you have your own social circle, hobbies, and passions, it allows you to be independent, which ultimately strengthens the bond in the relationship. Having a life outside of the relationship doesn't mean you're not committed. It means you're secure enough to pursue your own interests without relying on the relationship for your sense of self-worth. When your world doesn't revolve solely around the other person, It removes pressure from the relationship, making it more natural and enjoyable. Additionally, your ability to have fulfilling activities outside of the relationship makes you more intriguing. The idea of a person who has a full, balanced life is incredibly attractive because it shows that they're not emotionally dependent on the other person for their happiness. It also creates a sense of freedom within the relationship, where both parties are free to grow and evolve individually, which in turn fosters a deeper connection. This ties directly into attraction. The more you live your life with confidence and purpose, the more desirable you become. When you don't need to chase validation or affection, you give off an energy of abundance and self-worth. It's not about playing games or manipulating the other person. It's about embodying the idea that your happiness and fulfillment aren't dependent on someone else's attention. When you confidently pursue your own life, goals, and interests, you radiate a sense of independence that is not only attractive but also empowering. People want to be with someone who is self-assured and capable, someone who brings something to the table and isn't looking to fill a void in their life. This kind of energy creates a natural pull because it's rare to find people who are truly secure in themselves and in their own lives. There are countless examples of individuals who have created successful relationships by focusing on themselves first. Take the example of someone who, after a breakup, took time to focus on their career, health, and personal growth. In doing so, they became more attractive to potential partners because they were no longer seeking approval or validation. They had worked on becoming the best version of themselves, and as a result, they attracted a partner who valued them for who they had become, not for who they were trying to be. Or consider a successful entrepreneur who spent years building their business and cultivating a life full of purpose and passion. When they entered a relationship, they did so from a place of strength and independence, bringing a sense of fulfillment and self-assurance into the dynamic.
Another example is the well-known story of actors like Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone, who have both publicly stated that they focus on their own personal projects and passions, which have only enhanced their relationships. Their ability to maintain a sense of independence and purpose in their own lives allows them to bring more into their relationships, strengthening the connection rather than relying on the other person to fill any emotional gaps. Their personal growth outside of the relationship has added depth to their bond and allowed them to remain strong, confident, and fulfilled individuals. In the end, focusing on your own growth and independence doesn't just make you more attractive, it also sets the foundation for healthier, more balanced relationships. When you invest in yourself first, you bring more value, confidence, and clarity into your connections. Not only does this make you a more desirable partner, but it also helps ensure that the relationship itself is built on mutual respect, shared growth, and emotional independence. It's not about needing the other person to complete you. It's about coming together as two whole, fulfilled individuals who bring their best selves to the relationship. When pulling back, it's important to avoid common mistakes that could potentially derail the process. One of the biggest pitfalls is becoming too distant or completely disappearing. While pulling back can help shift the dynamic, if you become overly aloof or ghost her entirely, it can create confusion and frustration. It might send the message that you're no longer interested, which can be off-putting. The key here is balance. Withdraw a bit to spark curiosity, but don't disappear without explanation or communication. It's also important to avoid sending mixed signals. If you're pulling back but then immediately acting needy or overly available, it can cause confusion and make her unsure of where she stands. Consistency is crucial to maintaining a healthy balance. Pulling back doesn't mean ignoring her completely. It's about giving her space to think, reflect, and perhaps even pursue you. But it must be done in a way that shows you still care and respect her. You're creating a sense of intrigue, not disappearing into thin air. It's essential to keep your actions aligned with your intentions. If you're trying to increase attraction, disappearing or becoming distant for too long can have the opposite effect. Instead, make sure that when you pull back, you're still showing consistent interest and consideration, even if it's more subtle. Consistency plays a significant role in how this strategy works. While pulling back is powerful, being inconsistent can confuse her and ultimately push her away. If you're hot and cold, sometimes distant, sometimes overly available, it can leave her wondering what you really want or how she fits into your life. Consistency shows that you're emotionally stable and secure, and it helps to build trust. You need to be confident in your ability to pull back without losing your own sense of direction, while also maintaining enough engagement to keep her interested and curious. In conclusion, the dynamics of attraction are more complex than just chasing or being chased. The key takeaway is that pulling back is a subtle but powerful strategy to shift the power dynamics and create intrigue. The psychology behind this tactic shows that people are more attracted to what they can't easily have, and when you focus on yourself and stop chasing, it allows space for them to step up and pursue you. This isn't about playing games or being manipulative. It's about demonstrating self-worth, confidence, and emotional independence. Now that you understand the principles behind pulling back and the psychology of attraction, it's time to put them into practice. Stop chasing, focus on your own life, and let her come to you. You might just be surprised at the results. Remember, the secret isn't in the chase, it's in knowing when to stop and let her come to you.